listening to Cult Life with your host, Robin Jackson.
I record this episode on the 44th anniversary of the June 16, 1976 youth uprising in protest of the oppression through inferior education and racist policies of the apartheid government here in South Africa. 23 were killed on that first day, and with a total of 176 for the entire June 1976. The current events surrounding the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent protests across America and other countries have shone a light on racism within our society once again. It has also overshadowed the worldwide pandemic we are fighting. It has brought to the fore the anger and frustration that many black and brown people have suppressed for a long time, especially in the United States. The American president himself, Donald Trump, is known for his history of racism and racist utterances. Instead of being a unifying force in this time of crisis, he has consistently been a dividing factor. Racism was first defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, the second edition in 1989, as the theory that distinctive human characteristics and abilities are determined by race. The same dictionary termed racism a synonym of racialism, that is, the belief in the superiority of a particular race. All world religions proclaim universal brotherly love. Yet, history is littered with moments in which religion has provided a justification for or has given cause to all kinds of atrocities directed towards people of different races or cultures. And we can think of the Crusades, the slavery, the Holocaust, etc., in this disregard. From this, a considerable number of historians and theologians concluded religion should contrarily be considered as a catalyst for anti-Semitism, racism, etc. Research has been carried out to investigate whether this is true. When one tries to make an overview of these numerous attempts, a very fragmented picture is obtained. The church played a significant role in the civil rights movement in America and were vital in the successes that were achieved back then. However, the historic archives and writings of some cults in particular is appalling when it comes to their views and beliefs with regard to black people. Let's look at firstly the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ, or the Mormons as we generally know them. Like other religious groups, Mormons have a complicated history around race. Until a few decades ago, the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ, or the Mormons, taught that they shall be a white and delightsome people, a phrase which is taken from the Book of Mormon. Until the 1970s, the LDS Church also restricted black members from participation in important rituals and prohibited black men from becoming priests, despite evidence that they had participated more fully in the earliest years of the church. Max Perry Mueller, a historian at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, argues that Mormonism is a quintessentially American religion. The Book of Mormon recenters the story of Jesus on the Americas, and the faith, which was founded in the 19th century, also tells the story through a very American lens. Yet while the story of race and the LDS Church is similar to other American experience of race, it also distinctive, leaving Mormons to grapple with the legacy of racism and white supremacy in their very own way. Mueller writes in his book Race and Making of the Mormon People, which focuses on a few important figures in the Mormon history. One of them, Jane Manning James, was part of the first black community in Salt Lake Valley. Despite her close relationship with the family of Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, she was denied access to important religious rites during her lifetime because of her skin color. While at least 2 black men held the priesthood in the early church from the mid-1800s until 1978, the LDS Church had a policy which prevented most men of black African descent from being ordained to the church's lay priesthood and barred black men and women from the ordinances of its temples. Under the temple and priesthood restrictions which existed before 1978, most black members of the LDS Church who were of African descent could not be ordained to offices in the priesthood, nor could they participate in the temple ordinances besides the ordinance of baptisms for the dead. For a time in the 1960s and the 1970s, they were not even allowed to perform baptisms for the dead, which is a Mormon belief and a Mormon doctrine. All men and boys who reach the age of 12 in the LDS Church are required to receive the priesthood ordination in order to hold leadership roles, to perform baptisms, bless the sacrament, and give other blessings. Since black men of African descent could not receive this priesthood, they were excluded from holding leadership roles and performing these rituals. Church leaders taught that these restrictions were commanded by God. The church's first presidents, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, reasoned that black skin was a result of the curse of Cain or the curse of Ham. They used their beliefs in these biblical curses as justifications for slavery. Brigham Young believed that the curse made black people ineligible to vote, also ineligible to marry white people or hold the priesthood. Successive church presidents continued to use their beliefs in these biblical curses as justifications for excluding black men from the priesthood and excluding black men and women from the church's temples. Well, according to the Bible, after Cain killed Abel, God cursed him and put a mark on him, although the Bible does not state what the nature of that mark was. The Pearl of Great Price, which is another Mormon book of scripture, describes the descendants of Cain as dark-skinned. In another biblical account, Ham discovered his father Noah drunk and naked in his tent, and because of this, Noah cursed Ham's son, Canaan, to be servants of servants. So although the Bible scriptures do not mention Ham's skin color, a common Judeo-Christian interpretation of these verses, which predates Mormonism, associates the curse with black people, and it is used to justify slavery. So that's the history of racism within the Mormon Church. Well, what about the Jehovah's Witnesses? Their history is not as rosy as they would like you to believe when it comes to racism as well. A quote from the Watchtower of 1904, February the 15th, pages 52 to 53, says this: "Can the Ethiopian change his skin? What the Ethiopian cannot do for himself, God could readily do for him. The difference between the races of men and the differences between their languages have long been arguments against the solidarity of the human family. The doctrine of restitution has also raised the question, how could all men be brought to perfection, and which color of skin was the original? The answer is now provided. God can change the Ethiopian's skin in his own due time." Professor H.A. Edwards of the School of Slater has written for the public press an elaborate description on how Julius Jackson of New Frankfurt, a Negro boy of 9 years, began to grow white in September 1901 and is now fully 9/10 white. He assures us that this is no whitish skin disease, but that the new white skin is as healthy as that of any white boy, and that the changed boy has never been sick and and never has taken medicines. So that was a quote out of the Watchtower in February 1904. The Bible versus Evolution in page 30, which is also a Watchtower publication, says this: God has favored, specially blessed and favored certain branches of the Aryan race in Europe and America. But the fact that the white race has been more abundantly blessed with the light of the gospel than others is not to be understood to signify that when members of other races heard and appreciated the gospel, they were repulsed or rejected by the Lord. While the elect church will probably be composed chiefly of the highly favored white race, nevertheless, it will probably have in it representatives of every kindred, people, and tongue. And then the Golden Age, 1929, July the 24th, page 702. It's a question from readers. It says, question is there anything in the Bible that reveals the origin of the Negro? And the answer is given there. It is generally believed that the curse which Noah pronounced upon Canaan was the origin of the black race. Certain it is that when Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren," he pictured the future of the colored race. They have been and are a race of servants. There is no servant in the world as good as a good colored servant, and the joy that he gets from rendering faithful service is one of the purest joys there is in the world. As a person of color in South Africa, and with our history and legacy of apartheid, the next statement in the Awake of 1953, October the 8th, page 6, is particularly appalling to me. It says there, South Africa's whole color policy is conditioned by this fact and this fear. 80% of her population is black. If the color bar is breached, what new dike can stop a black flood from overflowing and destroying the civilization with which white men have displaced the wilderness? Truly, truly an appalling statement. The Ku Klux Klan, a organization that is probably well known in America and the worldwide, which arose in the American South after the Civil War as a heretical Christian cult, was also described, as persecution of African Americans and others as a form of human sacrifice. The Ku Klux Klan, commonly called the KKK or the Klan, is an American white supremacist hate group whose primary target is African Americans. The Klan has existed in 3 distinct eras at different points in time during the history of the United States. Each has advocated extremist reactionary positions such as white nationalism, anti-immigration, and especially in later iterations, Nordicism and anti-Catholicism. The distinctive white costume permitted large-scale public activities, especially parades and cross-burning ceremonies, while keeping the membership rolls a secret. Sales of the costumes provided the main financing for the national organization, while initiation fees funded local and state organizers. The second Klan embraced the burning of the Latin cross as a dramatic display of symbolism with a tone of intimidation. No crosses had been used as a symbol by the first Klan, but it became a symbol of the Klan's quasi-Christian message. Its lighting during meetings was often accompanied by prayer, the singing of hymns, and other overtly religious symbolism. And since the election of Donald Trump in America as the president, hate crimes have been on the rise. White supremacists have been emboldened. Anti-immigrant rhetoric has intensified. And I condemn, and like many people condemn, these awful examples of prejudice and bias and hate. But systemic racism is something different. It's less about violence or burning crosses than it is about everyday decisions made by people who may not even think of themselves as racist. It is systemic in our religions, our schools, our court systems, and our police departments, and especially in the police departments in America. In my opinion, the church and cults do not get off very lightly when it comes to the systemic racism we see both in America and in different parts of the world. That's the show for tonight. Until next time, bye for now.